Welcome to Woodbury Writes Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Carlson, and I am here today with author Tracy Bittner, formerly of Sandy Hook, Connecticut, and now of Midlothian, Virginia. She is the author of the Amazon bestseller, The Forgotten Nurses, Finding Peace and Purpose in the Stressful World of Veterinary Medicine. It's a tremendously powerful book and a handbook for anybody who owns a pet and goes to the vet's office to keep in mind what all the staff at the vets have to deal with when they deal with animals and people. And it's full of wisdom that's beneficial to anybody, whether or not you have a pet. And it's an honor to have you today, Tracy. So thanks for joining us at Woodbury Writes.
Thank you, Sandy. It's an honor to be here.
So you've been a vet tech for 30 years and you produced this book a couple years ago. Did you ever see yourself in the early days of your profession as becoming a professional best-selling author?
Yes, but of fiction, not of nonfiction. And I've been writing since elementary school. I went to Sandy Hook Elementary, grew up in Sandy Hook, Newtown area. I've been writing since I can remember, but it's always been fiction. And I have a book like 3/4 of the way complete, but I never really finished one because I always had all these other ideas and I'd start another one. And horses were always the central focus. I'm a long time horse girl, and it was always going to be, revolving around that. And then COVID hit, and I'm also a professional pet sitter. And of course, nobody was going anywhere. So I had some downtime. And everyone says, write what you know. Well, I've been through a lot in this profession. Everyone thinks we just play with puppies and kittens all day, and that's quite far from the truth. Physically taxing, emotionally taxing, mentally taxing, and everything amped up during COVID. 23 million more pets were brought into homes, but there was only 5,000 new veterinary graduates. So we were just overwhelmed. And one day I was driving home past a hospital, and a human hospital, and I saw a sign that said heroes work here, which is absolutely true. And I cannot imagine what the human medical staff was going through at that time. So I don't mean to diminish that at all, but I just thought, well, I'm a nurse as well. What about us? And the term, the forgotten nurses, just popped into my head. And then I just had all these ideas about it, just explaining mostly to the veterinary staff that they weren't alone in what they're going through. But I find that it has been very relevant to anyone not in the profession either.
As a public school teacher, there were details in your book that resonated with me about the expectations that people come at you with, and the idea that you're meant to fulfill their idea of what you do, and without a full understanding of what the job entails, and how complex and multi-layered a day can be, dealing with multiple different personalities, multiple different
species,
economic backgrounds, all of that. And the same is true with your patients who come in. They've all got stories.
Yes. And, a lot of their stories, honestly, are, this is a rescue animal. Therefore, they want cheaper vet medicine a lot of times because they think they are the hero and they did a great thing rescuing this animal. That's great. I've rescued most of mine too, but you've taken responsibility for them. That doesn't mean you get everything free or cheap. And that can be really frustrating. They think they need to get into the vet clinic right now just because they've sat on a problem for a few weeks or months, and all of a sudden it's an emergency on a Friday night. That's quite a popular theme. We had a man call the other day and demand to be seen right now. We didn't have a vet in the building. It was 7:30 in the morning. They don't get there for another hour. And when that was explained, he said, wrong answer. What you should have said is, I can come in right now. And the receptionist explained that you can come in, but we don't have a doctor. You need to go to the emergency clinic. And he said, you need to look in the mirror and see what a horrible person you are. And we deal with that on a daily basis.
So how have you learned to cope on a regular basis with all the demands of your own life?
I think what really resonated with me and kind of gave me like the launching pad for this whole book and idea was when I heard about the author Simon Sinek, and he writes about your why. And I think that's extremely important no matter what we do for a living, is to remember why you're doing it. And, so often we get caught up in other things. And like we were just talking about, some clients that can be horrible to us and demanding, and I'm not doing it for them. I have to remember I'm in this to help the animals who have no voice. And, if I can help even one just kind of up level their care a little bit, whether that's, nutrition or more exercise or training or anything, that's what I'm here for. And I really enjoy the client education aspect. And when people are grateful for any advice, what products I like. They're right now I'm mainly a surgical technician, so I'm in surgery 4 days a week, and just calming their fears, telling them my own personal stories with my animals and how nervous I was when my animal had to go under anesthesia, and that I understand, I think calms them a lot. And just delivering their animal at the end of the day safely back home to them just makes it all worth it for sure.
Who were some of your mentors? You described them in your book, and I just wanted to note for our listeners, the structure of your chapters is really awesome because it provides a kind of interactive piece for the reader. And you describe some aspect of your experience as a veterinary technician. You identify sort of the mentors in the world of psychology that have helped you, and spirituality, who have kind of fed your process, and you have like to-do steps, things that people can do on a practical level to find peace in their own lives in dealing with factors, experiences, people that might throw more at them than they're ready for, and to kind of have a sense of keep your wholeness together. Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the reason I structured my chapters like that, I am an avid reader, which can get in the way of my writing because I usually have about 6 books going at one time. But I also have all these notebooks of like quotes and ideas and all these people that, I've learned a lot from, and that, like you said, are my mentors from afar. So I can't certainly write about everything, but yeah, I did structure it with, I had some questions like, how do you struggle to define your feelings or emotions? And then I have resources. So if anyone wants to delve deeper into the topic that I'm talking about, like I said, Simon Sinek is one, and I forget the exact name of his book, but it's about why. Mel Robbins, I really enjoy her books, like the 5-Second Rule. She also has a great podcast. Real Happiness by Sharon Salzberg is a good one. The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz are just a few. Brene Brown is a big one. Just people that have been through struggle and strife and came out on the other end. And I think anyone, no matter what profession or station in life you are, anything, can benefit from, self-reflection, self-help, personal power. And that's just kind of one of my favorite topics to do, is improve myself. And obviously I'm far from perfect, as nobody is perfect, but I'm continually researching things and reaching out to mentors, whether I know them in person or, just through books or podcasts. And just always trying to improve. And I thought, well, because this is a passion of mine, I'll just pass it on to others. And yeah, it has resonated with people in all professions, honestly.
And it's a manageable length too. I mean, when my copy arrived from Amazon, I sat down and I started the first page, and I felt like this person I had never met before, Tracy Bittner, was talking to me across the table about experiences that were analogous to things I'd been through, or types of people I'd encountered in my professional or my personal life. And And some of your examples, I don't want to give your book away, but are so heart stopping. And if as the person who's always had a dog in the house or
Hmm.
dogs, and understanding that their life cycles are shorter than
Yeah.
ours by a lot, but
Yeah.
they're with us long enough to become very, very special parts of our lives, and what it's like to look at those end times for them, and the way you describe absorbing that and absorbing the experience of that and processing it in a way that leads you to wholeness. It made me reflect a lot on trips to the vet, particularly during COVID, when there was I have small dogs, so it was the handoff in
Hmm.
the parking lot with,
Yes.
we were all masked, we were outside, and it's like, I don't know you. You don't know me.
Yep.
Here's my dog. What's going to happen and what's going through the dog's mind. And I think trying to create an atmosphere in the car waiting of calm, so that the calm went with the dog. But it was intense and it was scary.
It's interesting you say that, trying to create a space of calm, because a lot of times when owners, I find that the owners are so nervous about going to the vet, whether it's just they just don't like going into a hospital or doctor's office themselves, or they perceive their animal to be like, again, oh, it was a rescue, it's been in a cage its whole life, I can't drop it off. And but I will be honest that a pretty large majority of the dogs, especially that came in without their owners during COVID, were more relaxed. They weren't feeding off their owner's own energy. And, we realized that it was a different and scary situation. And a lot of them were afraid because they couldn't see our face. They couldn't tell. They do read a lot of body language, obviously, not they can't talk English or whatever. Um, yeah, so they couldn't really see our expressions, and that was scary. But at least at my hospital, and I know this is across the board, that we all pitched in and just gave them extra love and extra treats, and just spent more time with them and talked to them, just to make it a better experience. So it was a very strange time for sure.
Sure. And I imagine the research is to be done yet on, those of us who came through COVID with a pet, how we fared emotionally and psychologically versus people who lived in isolation. I mean,
Yeah.
to just always open the door to unconditional love and affection. It
Yes.
does make a difference in your life, and it's not to be sold short. There's no virtual pet in the world that can replace a real animal who thinks you're the center of the universe. It's pretty nice.
Absolutely. And they have so much more emotional bandwidth to them than I think we will ever know. Um, yeah, just the unconditional love, and I just enjoy so much taking care of them. And everyone always asked if I wanted to be a veterinarian, and honestly, maybe for like 5 minutes. I really always wanted to be a nurse, and sadly, that really hit home when I was a junior in high school, and we had a barn fire at the place where I kept the horse I was in the process of buying, and we lost 18 horses that day, and there was
Oh,
only one vet on the scene, and I'd never felt so helpless in my life. There, I didn't know what to do. I was only probably 16, and in that moment, I promised my horse that passed away in that fire that I would care for as many animals as possible, and I have kept that promise now for 30 something years.
that's powerful. That's powerful. And
That's really my base why, and then there's other whys layered on top of that, but that's my bottom line why.
as you're describing that and people asking you this question, don't you want to be something else? I was just wondering if that's a peculiarly cultural
Mhm.
phenomenon, to make a choice in our lives that we find fulfilling makes us suspect in some way. What is that?
You're absolutely right, and I have had people, including a boyfriend at the time, introduce me to others as a vet, and I would say, I'm a veterinary technician. And I had another person say, don't sell yourself short. And I was so offended by that. I mean, this nursing is a career in its own right, it's a profession. It's not just a passing job. Yeah, I don't know if human nurses are asked as often if they want to be doctors.
It's really interesting, and a good veterinary technician, like a good nurse, is the first face of the kind of care you're going to receive. I mean, the awesome power and responsibility in that position. I mean, that's our experience of medicine.
Right.
It's the impression that sticks.
The sad part about that is, we all try to put on our happy faces. And I mean, this happens on a daily, weekly basis that we come out of the room with the euthanasia. It could be an animal we've known 15 years since it was a puppy or a kitten. And, we're all grieving, we're all sad, we do cry. And then the next room that we have to go into is someone got a new puppy, and you have to go in there with a smile on your face and congratulate them and ask all the questions and answer all their, new parent questions. And it's just an emotional roller coaster.
And your book delivers that for the reader. And I think it's, as I said before, it's an amazing book for people in your field, but also people with pets and people without pets who deal with other people. I think it broadens our understanding of your profession for sure. But I think the humbling and important experience is to be mindful that we only see a little bit of what a person's going through in a day. And to
Absolutely.
be thoughtful in that way about everybody we encounter in a day sure could help.
It sure could. And, the basis of my book is what I've been through in the profession. And I think why it resonates is most of the bullying and abuse I've dealt with hasn't been from clients. It's been through my own coworkers.
Hmm.
I've been bullied more as an adult in the workplace than I ever was as a kid growing up. And I just think as a veterinary culture, but a culture in general, we just need to do better. Like, why do we treat our animals so well and other people's animals that come in and then we're stabbing each other in the back?
Right.
It's just insane. And a lot of people in this profession in particular are, we're emotional people, we're sensitive people. And so the bullying, I think, gets to us a lot more, definitely does to me. And when I read a book called The Highly Sensitive Person, I was 40 something, and I'm like, oh, well, that describes me in a nutshell. And it just finally all started to make sense. Like, I was always told I was shy growing up, but I don't consider myself shy. Like, client education is one of my favorite things. I like talking to people. And it was the anxiety and the sensitivity, and people that are bullies just feed on that. I don't know why. I will never quite understand it, but the bullying, the gaslighting, the narcissism, all of that, I wrote about, at length in the book.
And I can relate to that as somebody who was called shy. I mean, the idea of being an introvert really wasn't a discussed thing at the time. And often I'll say to my husband, I'll come home on a summer afternoon when school's out, and I'll say, Ed, 3 humans today. I have to go sit down. And I can be in a room full of kids all day, and it's fine. I can hang out with my husband and my dogs, fine. But it's all those other demands and waiting for the narcissist to do that thing, or the
Yes.
gaslighter. And like, okay, what do I do with you? How do I make you go away? And how do I put you in the compartment you belong in because you're here? And I think that's the other power of your book is like, it's like, yeah, somebody else has been there, and you put the words on it. So thank God you did. Can you talk about the process of publishing through Amazon and rising through the ranks to be so successful on that platform?
How I started this whole thing, another one of my mentors that I've never met in person, I love his podcast. He has several books out. The Miracle Morning is probably his best known bestseller, but his name is Hal Elrod. And on his podcast one time he was talking about self-publishing school, and his friend Chandler Bolt is the president. Most podcasts, you take their advertisements with a grain of salt. It may be great, but they are getting paid for it. Well, Hal only has 2 sponsors. Self-publishing school was one of them. So I knew it was legit and that it was top notch. So I called the school. They were having a promotion from having listened to this podcast. And it was several $1,000s. It was not cheap, but I thought, you know what, this is my chance. I'm going to invest in myself. And I did. And I signed up. It is now called selfpublishing.com. They removed the school part, but wonderful bunch of people. They talk you through every step. They celebrate every win with you every step of the way. They have an authors conference every year. It's a lot of fun. And I wrote this book in about 3 months. When I've been writing for, 40 something years and hadn't published anything. Having a coach, having a timeline, having exactly what to do and when really was beneficial. So I highly recommend them. And then, I just published through Amazon. I had a cover designer and an editor. And then once that's all done and perfect to your liking, which is never going to be perfect, but you just upload it to Amazon and Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP. And you very nervously hit send. And your book is born into the world. And it's such an amazing feeling. And the way that they do the bestseller is like how many books are sold in certain categories. So you get to pick what categories you want your book to be in. Like mine's in veterinary medicine, small animal medicine, pet care, stuff like that. And then it's based on how many books you sell compared to the other books. So I've been a bestseller twice now, like a year and several months apart from each other, which I found fascinating. And most people with self-publishing have what they call a launch party. So instead of going to book signings like they used to do, it's now mostly podcasts and having a launch party where you send your manuscript to several people, whether it's your friends, family, coworkers, whatever. And as soon as it's launched, they read it and then they put up a review, and that really helps generate things. So I thought, okay, great. Well, all my coworkers should read it, right? And I gave everyone at work, which was like 20 something people, a signed copy. And I think I got 2 reviews, and not sure if more than 5 people maybe actually read it. And here's another like punch in the gut. I'm like writing about bullying and feeling down and not feeling heard. And I was just kind of dumbfounded. I mean, they warn you about it, but I was like, oh no, not my friends, right? So that was a little bit of a downer. However, the bright side of that is that I earned every review very honestly. I mean, the majority are from people I don't know, I've never met. And right as of this morning, I had 170 reviews with an average of 4.7 out of 5 stars. So I'm very, very proud of that.
That's great to hear that procedure in a nutshell. Sounds like having that structure and support really are the bridge that carry you over from concept to product.
And I think it makes it a more professional book. I mean, anybody honestly can just write a book and publish it. And I've read some that I find mistakes and grammar mistakes, and this makes no sense every page, and I can't read it. I didn't want that kind of a book. So I'm sure there's mistakes in mine, but you try to make it as professional looking and sounding as possible. And self-publishing certainly helped with that.
That's true. And I too am an avid reader, and I very often find things in professionally published books where they miss something, and for me it's just like, yes, we're all human. I kind of appreciate when those things happen, that there's
Right.
that one thing that got away or 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
and having a good copy editor is so vital, and it's
It
so
really is.
easy for avid readers to read right past the boo-boos, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
So Tracy, what's next for you in the world of writing now that you've accomplished this? Are you going to go back to fiction, or do you see yourself more in the veterinary genre?
That's my conundrum right now because I have two books in my head. One is fiction based around horses, and the next one is also in the same genre that The Forgotten Nurses is, and it's called Pet Peeves. And this one is more generated toward pet owners or parents, as we now call them, and I guess just how to level up their care and how to kind of help us to help them. And I think I have a very unique situation in that I'm also a pet sitter. So I do go into a lot of these people's homes and I get to see how their animals live at home. And that's a privilege. And if I can kind of take that and educate people as to how to make their home environment a little better here and there, and how, you know, I guess when they see any medical issues, when it's a good time to call the vet, when you can wait, what you should do, all those things just to help educate people, but in a fun way and through stories, and try not to hurt anyone's feelings, but sometimes common sense isn't common.
There you go. And you know what? You have to write that book because I want it, you know. I mean, there's so many
It's a
times
little
you,
harder now with pet sitting before and after work, working full time, taking care of my horse. It's a lot. I'm trying. I know my dad always says it's just an excuse, but I'm really exhausted all the time.
I bet. And I don't want to be too darkly humorous, but I did see that the COVID hospitalizations are ticking up again this summer.
Oh no.
So I don't know if it's in the stars, we may be housebound again. Who knows? That's not even funny though. Um, well, that's great. I'm just thinking of the things. I grew up. The dog got the table scraps and a little bit of Alpo
Right.
or Purina. It was the Purina,
And
and that was
probably
it.
live to be 18, right?
Yeah, but try to tell the the parent of that dog that it's okay to just throw throw a
Right.
bunch of stuff in a dish. It's also that sort of evolution of thought and understanding too about what animals need and how they are emotionally alive the way we are, and all of those things, that their experience of being alive is every bit as complex as ours.
And that's one of the kind of ideas in my head is I call them platinum pets. So there was, and I have this in my book, the golden rule that we all know is treat others as you would like to be treated. But the platinum rule is to treat others as they want to be treated. And I think that's becoming more and more important just in different like gender identity and all that. But it's also important with animals that, gosh, one prime example that comes to mind is when people are vegetarians and therefore their dog must eat a vegetarian diet and they want meat. Yes, they can process vegetables and carbohydrates, but treat them as they want to be treated. Treat them as a species they are and the wonderful individual souls that they are.
Absolutely, it's that sort of tendency to impose the individual's worldview on everybody around them, and
Yes,
it's all these myriad tyrannies at work in our world today that sometimes it's easier to not talk before choosing the wrong word, and
right.
so counterproductive. But that platinum rule sounds like a great way to go forward, and I hope you do have the time to write the Pet Peeves book and the horse book that you've got going,
Thank
because
you.
you're obviously a writing talent with so much insight, compassion, humor to offer anybody who picks up one of your books.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So, Forgotten Nurses: Finding Peace and Purpose in the Stressful World of Veterinary Medicine, available on Amazon by Tracy Bittner, one of Newtown's children now living down in Virginia, a fully fledged animal caregiver and a veterinary nurse who's doing great things. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you, Sandy, for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for listening and for supporting me. I really, really appreciate it.